I used to believe that family was everything. I grew up thinking that no matter what happened in life, the people who shared my blood would always stand by me. My sister Brooke and I were close since childhood. She was 3 years younger, and I always saw myself as her protector. Then there was Megan, the woman I planned to marry after 4 years together. I trusted both of them completely. But some secrets have a way of destroying everything you thought you knew. Before we go any further, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If stories about betrayal and rebuilding resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, stay with me. This story might feel familiar to you. My name is Lincoln, and at 30 years old, I thought I had my life figured out. I worked as a construction engineer for a reputable firm in Denver, Colorado. The job was demanding, but it paid well, and I took pride in what I did. Every bridge I helped design, every building I contributed to, felt like a small legacy I was leaving behind. I had spent years saving money, being careful with every dollar. And finally, I managed to buy a small house in the suburbs. It was not a mansion, but it was mine. 3 bedrooms, a decent backyard, and enough space for the family I hoped to build someday. That family was supposed to start with Megan. We met through a mutual friend at a barbecue 4 summers ago. She was a nurse at one of the local hospitals, and from the moment we started talking, I knew she was different. She had this gentle way about her, always thinking of others before herself. When her patients were struggling, she would stay late just to hold their hands. When I came home exhausted from work, she would have dinner ready and a smile waiting. We moved in together after 2 years of dating, and I proposed on our 3rd anniversary. She said yes with tears in her eyes, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. Our wedding was planned for the fall. We had already put down deposits on the venue, a beautiful barn outside the city with mountain views. Megan had picked out her dress. I had asked my best friend to be my best man. Everything was falling into place. Then there was Brooke. My little sister was 27, working in marketing for a tech company downtown. Growing up, she was always the baby of the family, the one my parents Harold and Diane doted on a little more. I never resented her for it. If anything, I loved watching her succeed. She was smart, ambitious, and funny in a way that could light up any room. Brooke came over to our house often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to hang out. She and Megan got along wonderfully, or so I thought. They would go shopping together, share inside jokes, and text each other constantly. I remember feeling grateful that the 2 most important women in my life were so close. My parents lived about 20 minutes away in the same city. Every Sunday, we would gather at their house for dinner. Mom would cook her famous pot roast, Dad would complain about whatever sports team had disappointed him that week, and we would all laugh together around the table. Those Sunday dinners felt sacred to me. They represented stability, love, and the kind of family bond I hope to pass on to my own children someday. But about 6 months before the wedding, things started to shift. At first, the changes were so subtle that I almost missed them. Megan began staying up later, always on her phone, typing away at messages she said were from coworkers. When I asked who she was talking to, she would get defensive, accusing me of being paranoid. I told myself it was just stress from wedding planning. Brides get anxious, right? That was normal. Brooke started coming around less frequently. When I invited her over, she always had an excuse. Work was busy, she was tired, she had other plans. At our Sunday family dinners, she seemed distracted, avoiding eye contact with me in ways that felt strange. Once I caught her staring at Megan across the table with an expression I could not quite read. When I asked if everything was okay, she just smiled and said she was fine. I wanted to believe them both. I needed to believe them. So I pushed my doubts aside and focused on the future I was building. I told myself that I was overthinking things because of the pressure of the upcoming wedding. Everything was fine. Everything had to be fine. It was a Thursday evening when my world collapsed. I was supposed to be at a construction site until 8 that night, but the project got delayed due to a permit issue. I left work early around 5:30, thinking I would surprise Megan with dinner from her favorite Thai restaurant. As I pulled onto our street, I noticed a familiar car parked in front of our house. It was Brooke's silver sedan. I smiled, thinking my sister had stopped by for a visit. Maybe the three of us could eat together. I walked through the front door without announcing myself, carrying the bag of takeout in one hand. The living room was empty. The kitchen was dark. But I heard something coming from upstairs. Laughter. Megan's laughter mixed with another voice I knew all too well. My heart started pounding as I climbed the stairs. Part of me was screaming to turn around to pretend I had not heard anything. But my feet kept moving one step after another until I reached the bedroom door. It was slightly open. I pushed it the rest of the way and saw them. Megan and Brooke. Together. In the bed I shared with my fiancé. Time stopped. The takeout bag slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. Megan screamed and grabbed the sheets to cover herself. Brooke's face went white as she scrambled to find her clothes. They were both talking, saying words I could not process. "I am sorry. It is not what it looks like. Please let us explain." But there was nothing to explain. The image was burned into my brain forever. My sister. My fiancé. The two people I trusted more than anyone in the world. I did not yell. I did not cry. I simply turned around and walked out of the house. I got in my car and drove with no destination in mind. The city lights blurred past me as I headed out toward the mountains, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Eventually, I pulled into an empty parking lot near a trailhead and sat there in the darkness. I stayed in that parking lot until the sun came up. I could not go home. I could not face them. All I could do was sit there and try to understand how everything I believed in had been a lie. The next morning, I finally drove back to the house. Megan's car was gone, and so was she. On the kitchen counter, I found a handwritten letter. Her handwriting was shaky, the words smudged in places where tears had fallen. She wrote that she was sorry, that she never meant for any of this to happen. But then came the part that made me sink to my knees. She confessed that her relationship with Brooke had been going on for 4 months. 4 months. Not a one-time mistake fueled by alcohol or poor judgment. 4 months of secret meetings, whispered phone calls, and lies told directly to my face. She wrote that she and Brooke had developed feelings for each other, feelings she could not explain or control. She said she was moving out and would send someone to collect her things. I read that letter 3 times, each time hoping the words would somehow change. They did not. My phone rang constantly that day. Brooke called over and over, leaving voicemails filled with sobs and apologies. She said she never meant to hurt me, that her feelings for Megan had developed naturally, and she could not stop them. She begged me to answer to let her explain. She said she still loved me as her brother, that she did not want to lose me. I deleted every voicemail without responding. The practical matters of canceling a wedding are brutal. Each phone call felt like ripping off a bandage from a wound that would not stop bleeding. I called the venue and forfeited the $5,000 deposit. I called the photographer, the florist, the caterer, the DJ. I called the bakery that was making our 3-tier cake. Every conversation required me to explain that the wedding was off, that I did not want to discuss the details. By the time I finished, I had lost nearly $15,000 in deposits, money I had worked overtime to save, money that was supposed to buy the beginning of my new life. 3 days after I discovered the affair, I called my mother. I needed someone to talk to, someone who would understand my pain and help me figure out how to move forward. I expected her to be shocked, outraged on my behalf, ready to comfort her son through the worst moment of his life. Instead, when I told her what happened, she went silent for a long moment. Then she said 4 words that changed everything. "Lincoln, I already know." I asked her what she meant. My mother sighed deeply and admitted that Brooke had told her about the affair 2 months ago. 2 months. Brooke had confessed to our mother, begged her to keep the secret, and my mother had agreed. My father knew too. Both of my parents had known for 2 months that my sister was sleeping with my fiancé, and neither of them had said a word to me. When I demanded to know why, my mother's excuses came tumbling out. They did not want to hurt me. They hoped the affair would end on its own before the wedding. They thought Brooke and Megan would come to their senses. They were trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. Protect me by letting me continue planning a wedding with a woman who was cheating on me with my own sister. By letting me spend thousands of dollars on deposits for a marriage that was built on lies. By watching me smile at family dinners while they carried this terrible secret. I hung up on my mother without saying goodbye. When she called back, I did not answer. When my father sent a long email justifying their decision, I deleted it without reading past the first paragraph. When Brooke showed up at my door crying, I refused to open it. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of pain. I took 2 weeks off from work, telling my boss I had a family emergency. I stayed inside my house with the curtains drawn, barely eating, barely sleeping. The bedroom where I had found them together made me physically sick, so I moved to the guest room. Some nights I would lie awake until 3 or 4 in the morning, replaying every moment of the past 4 months, searching for signs I had missed. My phone became a source of constant anxiety. Brooke sent dozens of text messages every day, ranging from tearful apologies to angry accusations that I was being unfair. My mother left voicemails asking me to please call her back, to please let the family work through this together. My father sent emails explaining that families forgive each other, that holding grudges only causes more pain. None of them seemed to understand what they had done. They wanted me to forgive, to move on, to pretend that 4 months of betrayal and 2 months of deliberate deception could simply be erased. They wanted things to go back to normal because my pain was inconveniencing them. Not once did any of them acknowledge the depth of my hurt. Not once did they ask what I needed. Every message was about Brooke's guilt, Brooke's tears, Brooke's fear of losing her brother. Every conversation centered on making me feel obligated to put my family back together. A month after the discovery, my mother called again. She sounded calmer this time, almost gentle. She said she wanted me to come over for Sunday dinner, just the 3 of us. No Brooke, she promised. Just me and my parents talking things through, trying to heal as a family. She said she missed me, that the house felt empty without me there. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Part of me still loved my parents despite what they had done. Part of me hoped that maybe face to face, they would finally understand my perspective. Maybe they would apologize sincerely, without excuses, without trying to minimize what happened. I pulled up to my parents' house that Sunday evening and immediately noticed 2 extra cars in the driveway. One I did not recognize. The other was Brooke's silver sedan. My stomach dropped. I considered driving away right then, but something made me walk to the front door anyway. Maybe I needed to see just how far my family would go. The moment I stepped inside, I understood. The living room had been rearranged. Chairs were set up in a circle like some kind of group therapy session. My parents sat on one side, their faces tense but determined. Brooke sat across from them, tears already streaming down her cheeks. Next to her was Megan, looking smaller and more fragile than I had ever seen her. And there were 2 others I had not expected. My Aunt Ruth, my mother's older sister, sat with her hands folded primly in her lap. Beside her was Pastor Thompson, from the church my family had attended since I was a child. He held a Bible in his hands, clearly prepared for his role in this ambush, because that is exactly what this was, an ambush. "Lincoln, please sit down," my mother said, gesturing to the empty chair clearly meant for me. "We just want to talk. We want to help this family heal." I remained standing near the doorway, my eyes moving from face to face. Brooke would not look at me. Megan stared at the floor. My father's jaw was set in that stubborn way I knew all too well. Aunt Ruth gave me a tight smile, the kind that said she thought she was doing me a favor. And Pastor Thompson opened his Bible as if Scripture could somehow undo the betrayal that brought us here. Lincoln, the pastor began his voice carrying that practiced tone of false comfort. I understand you have been through a tremendous trial, but the Bible teaches us that forgiveness is not optional for those who follow Christ. In Matthew chapter 6, we are told that if we forgive others their trespasses, our Heavenly Father will also forgive us. Holding on to anger and resentment only poisons your own soul. Brooke took this as her cue to speak. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling voice. Lincoln, I am so sorry. I know what I did was wrong. I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you. You are my brother, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Please, please forgive me. I will do anything to make this right. My mother chimed in before I could respond. Lincoln, this is tearing our family apart. I understand you are hurt, but you are being stubborn and selfish. Do you know how much your father and I have suffered watching our children refuse to speak to each other? We are your parents. We deserve better than this. My father nodded firmly. A real man knows how to forgive. A real man does not hold grudges against his own family. If you cannot move past this, you are going to regret it for the rest of your life. I did not raise you to be this way. Even Aunt Ruth added her voice to the chorus. Family is everything, Lincoln. There is nothing more important in this world than the bond between siblings. You need to think about your parents. They are getting older. How will you feel if something happens to them, and you have spent their final years creating drama over something that could have been resolved with a simple conversation? I listened to all of them. I stood there in that doorway and let every word wash over me. Pastor Thompson quoted Scripture. Brooke sobbed and begged. My mother guilted. My father shamed. Aunt Ruth moralized. And something inside me went very calm. I walked to the empty chair in the circle and sat down. Everyone seemed to relax slightly, thinking they had won. Then I looked directly at my sister and spoke in a voice that was steady and cold. Brooke, you did not make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or saying something you regret in anger. What you did was a choice. You chose to pursue my fiancé. You chose to lie to my face for 4 months while you carried on your affair. You came to my house, sat at my table, ate food I prepared, and then went upstairs to sleep with the woman I was going to marry. You made that choice over and over again every single day for 120 days. Do not call that a mistake. I turned to my parents next. You knew. Both of you knew for 2 months and said nothing. You watched me plan my wedding, spend my savings, and build my future on a lie. You had dinner with me every Sunday and smiled across the table while keeping this secret. You did not protect me. You protected her. You chose Brooke over me, and you do not get to pretend otherwise. I looked at Pastor Thompson. With all due respect, you know nothing about what happened in this family. You were invited here to be a tool to use religion as a weapon to pressure me into submission. Forgiveness cannot be forced. It cannot be scheduled or demanded at someone else's convenience. If you understood anything about actual healing, you would know that. Finally, I addressed the entire room. I want you all to understand something very clearly. I do not owe anyone here forgiveness. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Forgiveness is something I give freely if and when I choose to people who have earned it through genuine remorse and changed behavior. Being related to someone does not give them a free pass to hurt me and then demand absolution on their timeline. I stood up from the chair. This ambush, this intervention has made one thing absolutely clear to me. This family is not interested in my well-being. You are interested in making yourselves comfortable again. You want me to pretend everything is fine so you can stop feeling guilty. But I am done pretending, and I am done with all of you." I walked toward the door. My mother started crying, calling my name, begging me to stay. My father shouted that I would regret this, that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Brooke ran after me, grabbing my arm, pleading. I pulled away from her without looking back. I got in my car and drove away from that house for the last time. That night, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I went through my phone and blocked every number associated with my family. My mother, my father, Brooke, Aunt Ruth, even Megan. I deleted them from my social media accounts. I created a new email address and abandoned the old one. The next morning, I went to human resources at my company and requested that they not forward any calls or visitors claiming to be my relatives. The first few months were harder than I expected. I had underestimated how much of my identity was tied to being part of that family. Sunday afternoons felt especially empty. I would find myself reaching for my phone to call my mom, only to remember that I no longer had that option. Thanksgiving came, and I spent it alone in my house, eating a turkey sandwich and watching football without really seeing it. Christmas was worse. I volunteered to work a double shift just so I would not have to think about the empty space where my family used to be. But somewhere in that darkness, I made another decision. I could not stay in Denver. Every street corner held a memory. Every restaurant reminded me of dates with Megan. Every mile between my house and my parents' house felt like a weight on my chest. I requested a transfer to my company's Phoenix office, and to my relief, they approved it within weeks. I sold the house that was supposed to be my family home. The real estate agent did not ask why I was leaving, and I did not offer an explanation. I packed what I needed, donated the rest, and drove south toward a city where nobody knew my story. In Phoenix, I started seeing a therapist named Sandra. She was a kind woman in her 50s with gray streaked hair and a no-nonsense approach to healing. She helped me understand that setting boundaries was not the same as being cruel. She helped me work through the guilt I felt for walking away from my family, the voice in my head that kept asking if I was being too harsh, if I should have given them another chance. Sandra taught me that I was not responsible for managing other people's emotions, even if those people were my parents or my sister. Work became my anchor. The Phoenix project was challenging, a major highway expansion that required long hours and intense focus. I threw myself into it completely, channeling all my restless energy into something productive. My supervisors noticed my dedication. Within a year, I had been promoted to project manager. I also started building a new social circle. At work, I met a guy named Marcus, who had gone through his own family trauma. We bonded over beers and shared stories, and he became the closest friend I had made in years. Through Marcus, I joined a weekend hiking group that explored the mountains around Phoenix. The physical exertion helped quiet my mind, and the people I met on those trails became a second family of sorts. I learned to cook properly, something I had always wanted to do, but never had time for. I read books about psychology and relationships, trying to understand what had happened and how to prevent it from happening again. I started going to the gym regularly, finding that the discipline of exercise translated into discipline in other areas of my life. 2 years after I left Denver, I met a woman named Harper on a hiking trip to Camelback Mountain. She was an elementary school teacher with a laugh that could fill a room and a kindness that felt genuine rather than performed. We started talking on the trail and did not stop until the sun went down. I told her about my past on our third date, wanting her to know the full story before things went further. She listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and respected my boundaries around family completely. We took things slow, both of us cautious about rushing into something serious. But over months of hiking and dinners and long conversations, I found myself falling for her in a way I thought I might never experience again. Harper taught me that trust could be rebuilt piece by piece with the right person. Through a mutual friend who still lived in Denver, I eventually learned that Brooke and Megan had broken up less than a year after the affair was discovered. Apparently, the relationship that destroyed my engagement could not survive in the open air. I also heard that my parents continued trying to contact me through various channels, sending letters to my old address and reaching out to distant relatives who might know where I had gone. But I never responded, and eventually the attempts slowed. When I heard this news, I waited to feel something. Satisfaction maybe, or vindication. But all I felt was a quiet neutrality. Their lives were no longer connected to mine. What happened to them was their business now, not mine. Sometimes people ask me if I have forgiven my family. The answer is complicated. I no longer carry active anger toward them. The rage that consumed me in the first months has faded into something quieter, something that does not hurt to touch. But forgiveness does not mean reunion. Forgiveness does not mean I have to let them back into my life. Forgiving myself for trusting the wrong people has been more important than forgiving the people who hurt me. The biggest lesson I learned through all of this is that family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by behavior. The people who show up for you, who respect your boundaries, who love you without conditions or manipulation, those are your real family. Sometimes those people share your DNA. Sometimes they do not. And sometimes the people who share your DNA are the ones you need to walk away from to survive. If you are watching this and you have been through something similar, I want you to know that it gets better. Not immediately, and not without work, but it does get better. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to build a new life without the people who hurt you, even if those people are your parents or siblings. Your healing is not dependent on their apology. So let me ask you this. If the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally betrayed you and then tried to force you to forgive them, as if you were the one causing problems, what would you do? Would you stay and try to make peace? Or would you walk away and build something new? I chose to walk away. I chose to build a new life in a new city with new people who actually deserved my trust. And that decision, as painful as it was, turned out to be the best one I have ever made. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. What would you have done in my situation? I genuinely want to know. If you found value in this video, hit the like button and consider subscribing so you do not miss future stories. And if you know someone who is going through a similar situation, please share this with them. Sometimes knowing that someone else survived the same pain can make all the difference. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to my story. I hope that wherever you are in your own journey, you find the strength to choose yourself and the courage to build the life you deserve. Take care of yourselves.